see all of you here, and in particular I'd like to thank the participants, but also to the members of the public for coming to this second event on the re-emergence of film in Pakistan. The very successful first event was held in Brown last year. One of the filmmakers at that event expressed how pleased she was that there was a specific forum for cinema in Pakistan, as all too often South Asian film festivals, for obvious reasons, tend to be dominated by films from India. I think what she was trying to say is that whilst we can learn, borrow and collaborate with filmmakers from India, that at this particular moment it was also necessary to have a forum dedicated to critically engaging with, reflecting upon and supporting the nascent industry in Pakistan. In any case, this is what I and my co-host and collaborator, Razira Zabindar, who is an associate professor of history at Brown University, are keen to do. We've had our eye on the re-emergence of film in Pakistan for the last 4 or 5 years. We are therefore especially indebted to all the filmmakers from these two events for agreeing to show their films, for giving us their time, and last but by no means least, for waiving all their fees, honorariums and remuneration for their time and expertise. We are grateful for your generosity. You have in that sense, along with our sponsors at Harvard and Brown, made this a public event. Public in the sense we inhabit this shared participatory space where we can come together to view, discuss, and think about the relationship of film and society. We have no particular private interests, but only want to share ideas and visions, ones that we hope will invigorate the production and reception of films and stimulate discussion and politics in the broadest sense. So after years of neglect, cinemas are being built in Pakistan. Films are being made, publics are being formed around the enjoyment, consumption, and discussion of films. This revival has led to considerable excitement and celebration, but also to some anxiety. Film as a mass medium has always provoked both. Walter Benjamin, the German cultural critic, in one of the early and influential reflections on film as a mass medium, pointed both to its democratic potentiality, but also to its capitalist appropriation, that it could be a very powerful media in an age of distraction, indeed one that could disable political engagement through its heightened aesthetics. Going to see a film then can be thought of as a form of surrendering one's senses to a larger-than-life experience, but I prefer to think of it as also engaging the senses. In whichever ways we may think about the relationship between film and society, and I think in the last 2 days and tomorrow we have been trying to really push those boundaries and try to think about them critically, I think that few can doubt that film has a tremendous capacity to craft and mobilize desires, to forge sentimental attachments, and to imagine forms of social and political collectivity. But it can also inspire empathy and engaged critique. You're all waiting for the main event, and I don't want to detain you for too long. But I would like to offer some brief thoughts and reflections on what the revival of cinema might mean, on the subjects and narratives of this emergent cinema, and of the social and political realities and imaginaries that are assumed, manufactured, or erased through film. While we may wish to celebrate the revival of film and cinema in Pakistan, we should also engage with why it has occurred, what shape this revival is taking, and how it relates to politics, economics, and technological developments. What are the political, economic, and technological factors that have contributed to, participated in, and hence shaped this revival? Clearly they are varied and numerous. Amongst the political factors, on the positive side, the recognition that film can contribute to developing a more vibrant and deliberative public. On the negative side, the realization that it can be utilized to forge nationalist and xenophobic sentiments. The role of the military with its discovery of soft power, the huge funds that it has at its disposal, and its willingness to lend equipment to create war epics such as Vaad and the forthcoming Yalgar, has to be a cause of concern. Here, as an instructive example, then could be the US film industry, with its aestheticization of war and violence, and its consequent contribution to the militarization of culture in this country. This has to be a lesson that we, who struggle to produce alternative, more benign social imaginaries, must contend with. Earlier, some of you viewed the very powerful documentary by Bentika Tahir on the wounds of Waziristan, and I think that was an argument and an incitement to think about film politically in ways that we can develop, debate, and reflect, develop, and reflect upon it further. Film also highlights the curious relationship between global capitalism and nationalist imaginaries. How is it that a mass medium that is inextricably connected, on the one hand, to the circulation of capital and commodities, and on the other to increasingly standardized narratives and visual genres, is so amenable to being described within nationalist terms? So much so that we as the organizers have distinguished and at times marked this festival as a Pakistani film festival, although we have equivocated and also referred to it as a cinema in Pakistan. Perhaps the latter is more appropriate, although it is not as short or as catchy as the Pakistani Film Festival. But this is not just a question of semantics or the order of words. In other words, the cinema in Pakistan foregrounds the activity, the making, the experiencing of film and cinema, rather than making the nation or the national as our subject or frame of attention. This is not to deny the relevance of the nation-state as a political and regulated entity, but only to suggest that we should focus on the more prosaic, the everyday, on the lives of ordinary people. For sure they are caught up and live in national contexts, but their lives and aspirations exceed the idea of the nation. The documentary Anjan Raste, which was on earlier today, helped stimulate discussion on these questions of nation, history, and various modes of attachment and belonging. A late addition to our program, the film Abdullah, which is going to be shown tomorrow at 11:15, is a film about an ordinary truck driver who gets caught up within an ongoing war on terrorism, and it foregrounds this relationship of the ordinary and the national. It has had some difficulties with the Central Board of Film Censors in Pakistan in getting a release, presumably because the gatekeepers of the nation-state are uncomfortable with its very sober and mildly critical depictions of the police. But if anyone in our literary and cultural history emphasized the relation of the ordinary in extraordinary times, it was Asad Ahmed, both in his life and work. It is fitting that his legacy is being revitalized at this moment, and we are very pleased to have both the director of the film, Salman Qusad, and Pakistan's most prominent historian, Professor Aisha Jalal, who has recently published a book on Manta entitled The Pity of Partition, with us today to deepen our insights and to speak of the importance of Manta. But all too often, as Benjamin also noted, film can be mobilized as the cultural and ideological dimension of capitalism, so that the glamour, gloss, consumption, and the legitimation of desires associated with an aspirational capitalist modernity become values that seem natural and easy to espouse. The question that I would like to foreground is this: to what extent does this appeal of globalization, of an aspirational commodified modernity, what Benjamin refers to as the aestheticization of politics, effectively depoliticize film? And as such, to what extent is this happening in our film industry and in the films being released? To what Tejaswani Ganti, in the context of Indian film, has referred to as gentrification? Will this erase other depictions of life, other ways of socializing, and alternative possibilities of social and political life? I urge the filmmakers and the audience here to creatively engage these global currents, rather than to reproduce them, to take into account the lives of others, rather than reduce them to the illiterate and the criminal, the uneducated and the unwashed. Let us not become a pale imitation of Bollywood, even while we can still enjoy Bollywood. Humans are, of course, complex and contradictory beings, and art, film, humor, and everyday conversation bring this out and kind of challenge the ideologues of various hues and stripes, whether they be nationalist, Islamist, liberal, or socialist. We can draw from these genres of film and art and humor, and especially from those that are deemed marginal in this neoliberal age. Fortunately, we have quite a few films and events at this festival that foreground issues of class and marginality. In particular, let me flag the documentary on the porters who made possible expeditions to K2, that we showed earlier, and Saad Khan's work on queer sexualities, which was also presented earlier today. Speaking to you as an anthropologist, I would urge filmmakers to take up an anthropological impulse. That is to engage with people who seem radically different in their values, social lives, aesthetics, and to bring their lives, stories, and values into view. This does not mean that we have to romanticize them or invest them with some form of authenticity or truth, but just that they should not be erased, made invisible, and ultimately disregarded as unimportant. I think yesterday's film Naman Mufad captured some of this texture of the life in Karachi, whilst nonetheless remaining an entertaining commercial venture. Hannah Arendt, the political philosopher, once said that politics is ultimately about the recognition of others whom one cannot escape and with whom one must share the world. I think film as a social and political endeavor can be informed by that ethos. Before I conclude, let me just thank everybody who's made this festival possible. First of all, the Harvard Asia Center and its director, Arthur Kleinman, who has long urged that we put together an event on film in Pakistan. Unfortunately, he can't be with us today, he's in China. And also to thank the South Asia Center at Brown University, who were responsible for last year's event and have continued to support this project. We are also grateful to the Art and Humanities Division, that runs some of the most exciting interdisciplinary courses in images, text and sound, courses that have inspired many students here at Harvard. We reserve a special thanks to Mina Hewitt and the South Asia Institute for their institutional support, and in particular also to Mustafa Sandani, who has done all the logistical work to make this event possible. Without all these people, literally this could not have occurred, and you would not be here today. And finally, I want to thank all the student volunteers who have been assisting over the past few days, and I hope this event lives up to your expectations, and that you enjoy the film today and the discussions tomorrow. So without any further ado, I've taken up too much of your time already. Let's get to the main feature. Thank you.